So this week we get to make another new stylish bag, and this one has a longer top handle, but of course you can also just make it longer if you want to wear it over your shoulder. And it also got an additional back pocket, and also on the inside you get an additional pocket, so you have all the storage compartments that you need. And with that out of the way, as always, let's make this. So we'll first start with the handle, where I thin out both of the ends of the long handle piece, and we'll also already bevel and burnish that sections, because they will be hard to reach later on. Then we glue the ends shut after we insert our arch bridge buckles, and then we can also glue on the smaller handle piece and then sew everything together. And of course then also finish the rest of the edges, and we already got ourselves a nice handle. Then to prepare our pockets, of course, as always, we will need to do a bunch of beveling and burnishing. And then we can start punching the holes for the outside, inside pocket, and also the gusset for the inside pocket. And when they are done, we can also already sew the gusset to the inside pocket. Then I'll get started on the front flap, where I first bevel and burnish the front flap support, and then we glue that on our back piece. And here, depending on what type of closure you use, you might also want to put that on the front flap support before you glue it in place. For example, if you use a magnetic button or so. Otherwise, if you use a backlog similar to mine, you can just do it at the end. And then we can get started punching the holes for our pocket, the handle cover, and also to attach the front flap support more permanently. And we can also already punch the holes for our handle, because we definitely do want to attach that before we sew in the handle cover. Now when we start sewing in the pockets, there's just one or two things to watch out for. And the pocket with the gusset should go on the inside and the flat one on the outside. And there are two more stitching holes on the back piece. So you want your first thread to just go through the back piece, and then your second stitch to go through both of the pockets, and then just continue stitching her all around as normal. And this can be a bit tricky because you're sewing together three pieces, but I find it quite neat that you can do all of these things within one stitch. And now that is starting to look like an actual bag. And next up, we can continue on our back piece. So we want to attach our handle, and once the handle is in place, we can also attach the handle cover. Then we also attach the other part of our backlog on our front piece. And here I just added a square rectangle piece so I can actually sew it to the front piece. But on the pattern I've also marked you on a dashed line where the front flap will fall on the front piece, so that depending on the type of backlog you have, you can adjust it accordingly. Then I also just finished the top edge quickly before we can actually start assembling our bag. And for that, on the gusset, I also use my groove cutter to add some small grooves, because I find this helps the gusset to wrap around more easily. And with that out of the way, we can start gluing these things up. And the way I do it usually is start with the front piece and one side of the gusset, and then we can start gluing them together. And also one trick I find myself using for these kind of things, you can also just cut the gusset a little bit longer, because sometimes it can be tricky to have them the exact perfect length by default, because depending on how you glue around the ends, it might change a little bit. And if you leave yourself a little bit left over, you can just cut it off after you've glued it in place. Vice versa, doesn't work as nicely, because once it's too short, you have a little bit of a problem. Then after we've glued and sewn together one side, we just repeat the same for the other side, so we can attach the gusset to our back piece. And then we just repeat the same steps to punch our holes, sew everything together, and then we're already moving towards the finish line. And as usual, of course, we will also want to bevel and burnish all the edges that we have left. So that would be the two pieces from the gusset and also the front flap. And then the last thing missing is some holes for my backlog. Attach that, and we're basically good to go. I think you can also adjust this pattern. For example, if you want to add a shoulder strap with some connectors on the gusset, or you can also just change the top handle to make it longer, so you can actually wear it as a shoulder bag. Let me see what you guys come up with. But as always, I do hope you liked the pattern and the tutorial video. And if you do, please leave a like or some comments. I'm happy to see what I can still improve. But with that, I would say, hopefully see you next time.